My favorite quote of the week is the Orange Blossom Classic is bigger than FAMU. Now it's on the Classic to prove that that statement has validity. Oh, yeah, it's locked on HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On HBCU podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I, of course, am Darian Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald Sports editor and current contributing writer at USA Today's Saints Wire. We have the camera spaced out so you see everything. You see the Mouth of the South, you have the Texas Southern flag, and you see the Saints pennant. So let's go. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more when you go to FanDuel.com/locked on. So new customers will get $150 back in bonus bets when you put down a $5 winning bet. Don't forget that just because the mic cuts off does not mean that the journey is over. It just means it's time to follow me on Twitter at South Exclusions. Y'all know the drill by now, but I'm going to tell you just in case you don't. Or maybe you're new, soon to be everydayer. Welcome to the show. We'll wrap up today's episode by looking at the CIAA because they have ended divisions. They are going to have one solid conference with no sort of separation when it comes to football. Prior to that, Prairie View A&M has a new quarterback in the mix, and he comes via University of Houston, and his name is Lucas Coley. Now, let's kick it off with what I am really here for, which is my favorite quote of the week. And I emphasize quote because I don't want people thinking that this was me who said it. If you got a problem with what I have to say here, at the beginning at least, take that up with Oliver Gilbert, third of his name, the OBC chairman, because Oliver Gilbert III says the Orange Blossom Classic is bigger than FAMU. And I love that quote because to me, that is an embodiment of what they are trying to prove in 2024. Is it true? I don't know. And I won't know until North Carolina Central and Alabama State face off against each other this fall. But what I can say is I love the tenacity. That's how I say. I love the energy that is beyond this quote. Look, I'll read the entire thing because I think the extra sentence maybe adds some context, but it really doesn't change how I originally took it. He says, and I quote, "Respectfully, I would like to see FAMU in the Orange Blossom Classic, but the truth is the Orange Blossom Classic is bigger than FAMU." Now, you tell me if hearing that first sentence changes the tone of it. Maybe a little bit. I could understand how one could see the Orange Blossom Classic is bigger than FAMU as a spiteful term, but when you hear I would love to have them in the event, you see there's no spite involved. But I never really felt spite. That was never the emotion that I took. That was never the energy that I took. When he says that the Orange Blossom Classic is bigger than FAMU, it's like when they say one monkey don't stop no show. That's the way that I personally took it. So I didn't need the extra sentence, but in the name of transparency, in the name of giving you all the facts and allowing you to come up with your own conclusion, I wanted to give you the entire quote. So overall, to me, this was an affirmation of self as opposed to an attack on the now departed party. So let's keep it pushing. Also, I like the fact that he said respectfully, and it wasn't a kind of a pseudo disclaimer. No disrespect, I'm about to violate. Like, with all due respect, I'm about to violate. Like, he really said respectfully and said a very respectful statement. Respectfully, I would love for FAMU to be here. I think that the entire quote together affirmed that the Orange Blossom Classic is going to remain strong with or without FAMU's involvement, but then also said, hey, I'm leaving the door open for this marriage to come back together because FAMU has been synonymous with the Orange Blossom Classic. So when he says that it's bigger, FAMU is a university. Orange Blossom Classic is an event. I believe that the university is bigger than the event if you're talking about in the grand scheme of things. But the way I took it was they do not make or break this event. And I'll tell you another thing. I'll tell you another thing is I'm very glad. I can't express this enough. I'm very glad that Jackson State is not a part of the 2024 Orange Blossom Classic. Let me tell you why. The reason I'm happy Jackson State is not a part of the 2024 Orange Blossom Classic is because the Classic took a 40-year hiatus, and when they came back, it's been FAMU versus Jackson State. So there's a lot of people who, depending on their age and whether or not they did research, may feel the OBC is a Jackson State versus FAMU event. So if FAMU leaves and Jackson State stays, they may just feel like Jackson State is as synonymous with this event as FAMU, and they're not. They aren't. The reason I don't know if FAMU or if the OBC is bigger than FAMU or if they can keep it rolling is because FAMU does provide that local aspect, right? Yes, I'm sure there's some North Carolina Central alum in Miami. I'm sure that there's some Alabama State alum in Miami. Miami is a wonderful city, right? But FAMU's right there in Florida. The travel, the ease, the ability, you still got to drive in. It's not as if they're in Miami, so you still have to drive in. You still get the commute, not the commute, the tourism fees. You still get all of that. You still get the hotels. You still get everything that you need. It's not as if maybe the airplanes make a little bit more money, the airlines and whatnot. But as far as city tourism, you're still making bread from Tallahassee to Miami. It's not as if that fee is a little bit different. Last time I checked, these are hotels, not colleges. So you're not getting out of state fees. So that's the thing for me is you still have that local aspect with Tallahassee coming down, and maybe you even get it more because they're more willing to travel earlier because they don't have to get the plane tickets and things of that nature. Just drive on down. I don't know. What I will say though is there's an opportunity. There's an opportunity for the Orange Blossom Classic to prove that they can have a great event without FAMU. Everything that the OBC does in the community will persist. Everything that they do off the field will continue. But let's be real, we're going to judge a lot of it off of what happens on the field because we're not even seeing all of that other stuff. So I need North Carolina Central and Alabama State, if I'm the OBC, to come out and have a great game because I need people and I need them to show up. I need attendance and quality. Those are the two things that I'm looking for to prove that I am bigger than FAMU, that I can continue without FAMU. Because when he really says that we're bigger than FAMU, it's saying that this is the first year that we are not synonymous with the Rattlers. I'm also glad that they didn't go get Bethune-Cookman. Go get 2 out-of-state schools, leave the door open for FAMU. This is great. Let's make sure. Oh, I do think that this is going to be a good game too. Walker Harris versus Andrew Body gives a certain level. It gives a certain level of quarterback interest that not a lot of teams would be able to provide because this is not, honestly, HBCU sports do not have a lot of returning high-level quarterbacks. Even these two players here that we have hype about, Walker Harris was a backup to Davius Richard last year, but he is one of the more hyped backups that I've seen in a long time as far as probably he's the most hyped backup that I've seen in all of HBCU football since I've started covering 3 years ago. And then you have Andrew Body. He's not new to the SWAC. We've seen him before, but he's new to Alabama State. So you kind of have that. I'm very interested to see these two teams. And if I had to bank on whether or not this was going to be successful, I would say that it is because Alabama State really does show love. I don't know too much about North Carolina Central's fan base as far as traveling to a school like or an area like Florida. But I do think that Alabama will easily travel out there. And that mostly comes from my conversations with Mason Smith. So who will be on the show tomorrow when we do our HBCU DLC pack. And I'll make sure to tease that at the end of the show. But we're going to have a lot of fun. HBCU DLC pack if they were added to EA Sports College Football 25. That's tomorrow. But as we keep rolling on today's episode, because we can't get to tomorrow until we finish with today, Prairie View A&M has a new quarterback, and his name is Lucas Coley. We'll see what he's able to do, but let's preview 2 of his biggest intangibles as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by Yahoo Finance. Now, have you ever felt like, dang, I don't like going here and there and here and there when trying to look at my multiple accounts? Well, if you ever felt that way, Yahoo Finance is the place for you because it would be great to see all of your investments and retirement accounts in one place. So Yahoo Finance consolidates your views from multiple accounts into one hub and allows you to access the expert analysis that you need to tend to your entire portfolio with confidence. Now, for more than 25 years, Yahoo Finance has been the brand behind every great investor, whether you're a seasoned investor or maybe you're new to the game. That's my favorite part. It allows you to go from the white belt to the black belt, but you can still use Yahoo Finance. So, with a community of over 90 million users each month, the real strength is helping you on your way to financial success. So, go to the number one financial destination. That is yahoofinance.com. Once again, that's yahoofinance.com for comprehensive financial news and analysis. Visit that brand, yahoofinance.com. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day. For your second listen, make sure you're checking out Locked On Sports today. It's the first of its kind, 24/7, all day, every day sports network on YouTube. It's live. So I don't know what's going on right now, because what I'm saying right now is completely different than what you're going to hear. If you pause this and go to it and go back to it 30 minutes later, it's completely different. So go to Locked On Sports today, all day, every day, and subscribe. Prairie View A&M has a new quarterback in the mix, and we all know that PV is looking for their starting quarterback. And the reason I say that with such confidence, despite not having the inside information on how they feel about all of the quarterbacks on the roster already, is because of Clifton McDowell. Clifton McDowell was an FCS quarterback who was highly sought after. The reason I emphasize Clifton is because you also have Coach Bubba McDowell. So we'll say Clifton and Bubba just so that we don't get this confused. But when Clifton showed up at PV's, it was either a spring game or a spring practice. It was something that was immediately reported. But the problem is not the fact that they went after a sought after quarterback, because who wouldn't? I don't even think that makes you look thirsty. It's not even the fact that people saw him at the game. If anything, that makes it seem like they were close. But it's the fact that Coach Bubba seemingly already laid out a plan of action. And it made people say that Clifton was committed. And I had never seen that. I never saw him say he was committed. So with that being said, I just felt like Bubba kind of, overplayed his hand a little bit, as my friends from Chicago say, he front his move a little bit, because that wasn't a done deal, and it looked really bad. It looked really bad when Clifton McDowell then announced that he was transferring somewhere completely different, and it made everybody wonder, wait a minute, thought he was committed to PV. So I think that the way it all happened, the way that everything transpired, that made him look thirsty. But now you got a quarterback. And his name is Lucas Coley. I would imagine that Lucas Coley steps in, and they're probably looking at him as their starting quarterback. Just for a little bit of background on who Lucas Coley is. He's a transfer from Arkansas. He redshirted his freshman year at Arkansas, and then he moved to University of Houston. Yes, that was right across the street from me, but this was a little bit after I had left. And also we have our Locked On Cougs, right? Because you got the Locked On Houston Texans, but this is the Locked On Cougs host, Parker Ainsworth, friend of the show, friend of mine, always been solid. And he sent me this quote, or not this quote, he sent me this video that he recorded and posted about Lucas Coley's departure. And he gives a little bit of background beyond just being the 59th ranked player in the state of Texas on his way out of high school. Like, those things are cool. But what Parker gave us was some actual information from close to the University of Houston, and it tells you what kind of guy and what kind of quarterback that he can be. So enough of me talking. Let's go ahead and hear what Parker has to say about this.
The Houston Cougars lose a leader. I'm going to Locked On Cougs, Parker Ainsworth, and Lucas Coley is headed to Prairie View A&M after transferring out of Houston and entering the transfer portal. Remember, Lucas was competing for the starting job in what was supposed to be an open competition, according to head coach at the time, Dana Holgerson, in the spring of 23. Lost that competition in the summer of 23 to Donovan Smith. Lucas transferred into Houston in January 22 from Arkansas, and he got there from San Antonio Cornerstone Christian. Now, Lucas is about 6'1", 6'2", and about 210 pounds, but he is a great leader, the kind of leader that had a leadership role on the leadership council of the Houston Cougars, even after losing the starting job. A great young man, a great prospect. As far as his football stuff goes, great on the out routes, great at hitting the sidelines from the pocket, more mobile than people realize, but I'd call him more of a pocket passer kind of guy. I think landing at Prairie View A&M is going to be a great fit for him. He can really be a great leader on and off the field, as well as finally get a chance to show off that arm that he's had since high school. I'm excited for him. Prairie View A&M is getting a great kid, and I'm really excited to see what Lucas does next. For all things Locked On Cougs, hit up Locked On Cougs every day. Daily host of Locked On Cougs, Parker Ainsworth here. Painsworth 512 on all your social media platforms. Locked On Cougs, primary Locked On Podcast. It's your team every day. Go Cougs.
And I think that two things that you should take from that, three things. One, Parker Ainsworth, phenomenal. If you have some extra time and you're just in the Houston area, maybe a Texas Southern alum, PV alum, you just want to know what's going on out there in Houston, check his show out, Locked On Cougs. Great guy. He's been on the show before, but let me just emphasize that, right? And we tried to set some things up, but it just hasn't worked. You know, sometimes folk be busy, but he's always stayed in constant contact, and I as well, about trying to work together whenever UH plays some sort of HBCU, whoever it is, right? But really the two things about Lucas Coley that you should take away is his leadership and his strong arm, right? Because if we listen to what Parker had to say, he was on the leadership council even after moving down the ranks as far as being the quarterback. Now, it's extremely rare, I would imagine, for you to have a quarterback who is not your starter yet still on a leadership council. For you to have that sort of presence in the locker room as a second or a third string guy, I believe that it speaks volumes on the character. And leadership is an intangible that you would want in your quarterback. Now, of course, you're going to have to be able to make the plays, and I don't like him moving from starter to third string. That's not, well, I don't care, but it's not exactly something that you would want. But you know what? He'll get on the field. Maybe he has to read the defense a little bit better. Maybe he needs to learn some things from actually playing as opposed to just being on the sideline. You can go the Musa route. You can go the Davis route. That's the two routes you got. I don't really want to hear about, oh, this guy wasn't that good at Arkansas, or he wasn't that good at UH. Hey, hate to break it to you, HBCUs are not getting high producing FBS quarterbacks to come transfer into their school. It's just not happening. So you're going to get more guys like Lucas Coley, but sometimes they come here and they figure it out through playing time. Sometimes they figure it out from just change of scenery. Sometimes they get the opportunity. There's a lot of things that go into it. Hey, maybe they couldn't crack that cut on the FBS level. They come down to the FCS level and they say, okay, I can do some stuff. I can put film on the film on tape on film, whatever, however you would say it, right? The second aspect to look at in Coley is his strong arm. If you excel in out routes in throwing up the sidelines, strength of your arm is a strength of your game, right? And I'm naming things like leadership. We're naming leadership and we're naming strong arm. Those are big intangibles that could lead to success. You still got to read defenses. You still got to be able to make the right decision. And those are things that we'll learn as the season goes on. But right now, if I have to give a couple of intangibles, talent is there as far as arm strength. And then you also have the leadership quality. I've seen that fail, but I also think those are building blocks of guys you want to continue to give chances. And he's getting his chance at Prairie View A&M. So we'll see what Lucas Coley is able to do out there in PV. Hopefully he ain't doing nothing week one, but after that, I wish you to, I can't even lie to you. I don't wish him the best of luck, guys. I hope that he does well in losing efforts, though, because that's Texas Southern. Have my guy, man, I told y'all Mason Smith coming on the show after we recorded it, because it's already been done. After we recorded it, he gonna ask me, so there's really no way you'd play with PV, even if they're the only HBCU in the whole game? I was like, bro, I'm not playing with him. You out of your mind? I'll go play with somebody else and I'll schedule them every year. Like, get out of here. He asked me that when we got off air. It was funny. But as we push forward, the CIAA is ending divisions. They're moving into one solid conference, and the two best teams will fight it out in the conference championship at the end of the season. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, and FanDuel is the official sports book of the Locked On Podcast Network. I don't like it, but the Dallas Mavericks knocked off the Minnesota Timberwolves. I'm rooting for Ant, but he hasn't scored the ball exceptionally over the last two games. Do you believe that in game 2 on Friday, he'll be able to hit his over in points? What about a guy like Jaden McDaniels, excuse me. Do you feel like he's going to be able to come out and perform like he did in game 1? Tonight, you have Tyrese Halliburton versus Jason Tatum. You have Halliburton points. He used to hit those all the time. He was a monster at the beginning of the season. You have a lot of players that you can put money down on. Go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to take advantage of these numbers. So, if you're new to FanDuel and you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon, you'll get $150 back in bonus bets if your first $5 bet hits. So go ahead and go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That is FanDuel.com/lockedon to make every moment more. As we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day, making it all the way to segment 3, and I thank you 2 times for that. I look like Usher with the watch this. But the CIAA is ending divisions. They're moving to one solid conference, which means there'll be no more North and South. And I feel like this is the direction that college football is headed. I feel as if you're seeing more conferences say, yo, we don't really need divisions. It's not necessary. And it never has been necessary. It's just kind of the way that things have been. The SIAC, no divisions. The MEAC, a little bit different, but no divisions. And now the CIAA, no divisions. You're seeing this on the Power 4 level. They're going into like modules or pods or whatever, and you're having permanent opponents. I'll see if the CIAA describes how they'll do their scheduling. But as of right now, at the end of the season, there'll still be a conference championship. The only difference is instead of having a North Division winner and having a South Division winner and having them face off in the championship game, it'll just be the 2 teams with the best record. So last year you had Union and you had Fayetteville State, who were the North and South champions. They will be the last North and South champions until the CIAA decides that they want to go back to divisions. The reason that I say decides they want to go back is because they've kind of played this back and forth game for a while. I wonder if the tone of collegiate athletics now, because it is different. I've said this at the beginning, and I think I've said it before, to be honest. It's different now. More conferences are saying we don't need to divide our teams up by division when they can all just be SEC. They can all be ACC. They can all be SIAC. They can all be CIAA. There's no need to divide it up. Will the fact that more conferences are adopting this philosophy lead to a more permanent philosophy for the CIAA? Because let's look at their history as far as having divisions. 70 to 72. In 1970, that was the first time that they ever had divisions. It only lasted 2 years. Clearly, they were uncomfortable with the concept and they went away. But they came right back in 81. And that lasted 9 seasons, 81 to 90. So, okay, cool. You were a little bit more comfortable, but it still wasn't overly long lasting. You take another decade off, you can come back into 2000 and you're saying, okay, we're going to have East and West. But then in 2010, you change it to North and South. But I'm still going to kind of clump that together as a 23-year divisional separation. That's way longer. When you look at the other 2 times they divided up into divisions, it wasn't even 23 years combined. So this is drastically different than what they used to. They were very comfortable with this, whether it was East and West or if it was North and South. Either way, it wasn't one total division. Now, the nerd in me is happy that they did this, not because it's the direction that college football is heading, but because it's an odd number of teams. And I just wouldn't have been happy with one division having 6 teams and one division having 5. There's 11 teams in the CIAA. You have Bowie State, Elizabeth City State, Lincoln, Virginia State, Virginia Union, Fayetteville State, J.C. Smith, Livingstone, Shaw, Winston-Salem State, and Bluefield State, because St. Aug actually has canceled their football program. And I think we broke down. No, actually, I don't think we did break that down on the show. But the nerd in me says, let's not have an uneven amount of teams in each division. Just give me some glasses and let me press them up. But anyway, I like it. I want to see how long that they go I want to see how long that they go, man, because I do believe that this is the future of college sports, and I think that the SWAC should adopt it too. I think they should. I'm not saying that having divisions, and this is how I wrap it up, because the way that I explain why I think a divisionless conference is better than one with divisions is because you can always guarantee that you'll have the two best teams as far as record go fighting it out. You can't do that with divisions. If one division has the two best records, too bad. You're not going to get them both in there. And I'm not saying that you run into this problem often. It's not something to cry about. It's not something to be like, oh, yeah, you have divisions. That's dumb because you're never going to have the two best teams. But instead, it's the fact that you can miss on having the two best teams. Once you take out divisions, that's no longer possible. That's my reason on why I think taking out divisions is best. And it's also just the future, and it's the way that college football is headed. So I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day. Hopefully you continue to head my way. On tomorrow's show, we'll have our HBCU DLC pack. It'll be Mason Smith and I, and we'll break down the 5 teams for him. I had 8 teams that I wanted to put into the DLC pack, even though he told me I can only have 5 to 7. I said, man, I just feel like I got to have fill in the blank, and you will see on tomorrow's episode. In the meantime, in between time, until the next time that we hear each other, family, take care, stay blessed. Peace.